Hi everyone, and welcome to our last week of holistic health. It has been an adventure this semester, and it's been wonderful to explore it all with each of you. So let's start with our acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I respect their cultural beliefs and the spiritual relationship with their country and recognise these are important to the Whadjuk people today. So our content for today is going through each of the main topics that we've covered over the last 8 weeks, and then to look at what your exam will be structured as. And we will go through this a lot more in the tutorial as well, and going through each of the questions. So our first topic that we were looking at is how we work effectively with families. Now, when we're working in the early years, the families are the first educators of our children, and it's really important that we understand their importance. So our early years learning framework, it seeks educators and encourages them to go beyond involving them in just the operation of the service and reporting to them. It wants them to collaborate with them, work out ways that they can all effectively support the children's learning. So the early years framework describes educators as working in partnerships and collaboration with children and families to negotiate the best experience for the children. So we know that they are the primary influence, so we have to make sure we work side by side with them. We're not in a fight with them about what is best for their child. We want to work together. The more that we can work together, the better that we create a partnership, the far better the education will be for each child that we have in our care. So for parents and caregivers, it promotes those wonderful feelings of being respected and welcomed by your early years service provider. And you always want to make sure when you are on prac that comes through really prevalently, that you are chatting with the parents, you are talking with them, you are not being this person that just sits off to the side. You want to be able to show that you are an active contributing member of that environment over your prac. And so remember that you have quality standards within your AITSL standards that talk about this. So that is in your report. So you want to make sure that you are able to demonstrate that. So if we have a look at our National Quality Standard Area 6, it's this idea that you are supporting relationships with families, you're engaging with the service, you're respecting the parent views, you're understanding the families are supported, and you're looking at how you develop those collaborative partnerships through things like transitions, access, and community engagement. So the elements are so clear, but we need to make sure that all educators are doing this, and that's why we've really emphasised it through this course. And then in fourth year, you do another course that is families and partnerships. So it's all about, before you head out on your final prac, making sure that you understand the value of involving the community in your work, rather than just being the educator that sits off to the side and does whatever they need to do. Our National Quality Framework states that all service types must provide evidence, not just be able to fill in the paperwork, but actually provide evidence that families have had the opportunity to contribute to the development and review of the service's statement of philosophy, principles, policies, procedures, and quality improvement. So it's not just you, it's everyone that needs to be part of the whole process. So let's think about this. In your assignment, the websites that you had to put in as your final part where you are going to look at and how you see the importance of effective relationships. So parents, they have so much to offer us about their child. They know their child. So it's the best thing for us to understand their child in the most amazing ways that they can be, but we make sure that that is a true exchange of information, not just a one way. So when we talk to families, we want to move beyond, the hello, how are you in the morning, and build that much deeper connections and understandings about when, why, what is everything that's going on. And that needs to be two ways, not just you telling the parents what happens at the centre or kindy and pre-primary and so on. You want to have that backwards and forwards relationship that's going on. So you'll find that you will really enjoy working with parents. It is fabulous getting to see what goes on and how they talk about things. And it's just a wonderful way of making sure that you're creating the best environment for the children in your care. So as the educator, you truly are what it is necessary to work effectively with families. So early childhood educators, they know how to facilitate learning. That is what you are good at. That is what you have been trained to do. We know and appreciate those individual quirks of every single child. We make sure that we are those warm, caring, loving people that really want the best for children. We develop and we specialize in creating those wonderful, warm relationships. We want to make sure that we are doing the right thing by every child and every person that we encounter within our centres and our schools. And we make sure that we actually make a difference in the children and in what they're doing and how they're doing it and so on. So we want to make sure that we are that point of difference in a child's education. So we collaborate to find out what the children need. We put our energies and efforts and commitment into creating that long-lasting effect with every child and every community member that we can as well. So when we're talking with children about their needs, part of that is their health. So we want to make sure that we're able to ask the right questions, communicate respectfully, be prepared to share your concerns. But remember, we've talked quite a bit about you're not a pediatrician, you're not a psychologist, you don't talk about a diagnosis, you talk about seeking help, getting second and third opinions. You look at how you can create the best environment for the children, and that sometimes it might need external support as well. And you want to be a really positive member of that community and so on. So we want to make sure that we take lots and lots of time to build those really good relationships with every family. So this is taken from a text. So are you ready to develop good partnerships with parents? You need to think about these sorts of questions. So this has been really interesting to look at for me, because what came out of these types of questions being asked in lots of centres is that a lot of teachers are not 100% comfortable answering these from a really good holistic point of view. So most parents want what is best for their children. The idea is that that should be true, but some educators don't feel that. Now, parents generally want what's best. Sometimes they don't know what that is though. So they want what's best for their children, but as the educator and the person who has spent 4 years at university, and probably once you have graduated, lots and lots of professional learning hours based around learning what's great for children, we are the people who know potentially a little bit more than some of those parents. So we have to help them to understand that sometimes they want the best for their children, but what they're doing is potentially not the best. So let's look at this next one. If parents don't agree with me, one of us doesn't have to be wrong. That should be true, because you can have a disagreement, but it takes good communication. Third question, children benefit from communication and collaboration between parents and teachers. We know that. We have that replicated so many times in so many different practical examples and research. My job will be more enjoyable because of my interactions with parents. It should be, but potentially it won't be if you don't understand and get on their wavelength. It's not about pandering to everything that they want. It's about having a partnership with them. And that means that sometimes you as the educator might have to say things they're not comfortable with, and sometimes they as the parent or caregiver has to say things you're not comfortable with. So it should be enjoyable. However, it may be painful for you as well because of what happens with parents. Now, the next one, parents can offer me insight about their children that will help me do a better job. That is 100% accurate. And it should be going both ways as well, that they might be able to learn or understand a little bit more about their child by the things that you're telling them as well. And in number 6, I can think beyond my own preferences and convenience to benefit the children and parents. So I've had lots of these types of discussions with parents where sometimes what I need them to do, the children to do or the parents to do, doesn't really fit with what they're comfortable doing. And so therefore we have to reach mutual understandings that this probably won't happen at that point in time. So I have occasionally parents who don't, I like to have shoes off for most kids most of the time, and I have some parents who prefer children to have their shoes on. Now, I'm not militant about making them take their shoes off, whereas other people are. So I encourage them to take their shoes off, but I allow the children to keep their shoes on if they're not comfortable taking their shoes off. Some children have sensory issues and they don't like to walk on the grass without their shoes on. So I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with, though, is parents telling me they don't want their child to take their shoes off because of whatever reason. I help the parents to understand my point of view regarding the shoes off and how we make sure safety is paramount, but also that it is much better for their development and their general movement and climbing and so on for them to be without shoes, particularly some of the shoes that the girls come in. They're tiny little things that fall off constantly, and the boys with their thongs, they just kick them off. So, next lot. Parents are entitled to the last say in their children's care and education. That is 100% true. However, we have to constantly come back to this idea it's a partnership. So helping parents to understand why we want things done in a certain way or why we're doing things in a certain way, that is really important. They might have last say, but we have to help them understand the reasons for everything. I'm willing to change my routines and practices if it works better for children and parents. I'm hoping that for most educators that will be true. I do know that for some it isn't, and that's where we need to work together a little bit more to make sure that we are providing the best education for everyone. And I'll grow as a professional through interactions with parents. That is 100% true, because you will end up understanding parents as a group and as individuals a lot more the more that you interact with them. And I know that having taught kindy for a number of years, being that first person, because this was prior to pre-kindy starting at the school that I was at, we were the first person that people met in terms of being an educator unless they had gone through childcare. But you will still get lots of children who've never been through childcare. So you will be the first person they have as a professional that is taking care of their child. And it is their baby, and we have to understand that. So when you're looking at these types of things, if you answered mostly C's, you've got potentially some attitudes and beliefs that are really going to hinder your building effective relationships. So parents are not adversaries, they're not problems, they're not a waste of your time. You have to make sure that you take lots of interest in what they're saying and doing. If you answered mostly B's, you demonstrate lots of interest in creating partnerships with parents, but you're going to have some conflicting attitudes. So you've got to work out how you can tamper those in some way. And of course, if you were like me and saying, I answered mostly A's, you understand the value. It's not easy, but it's really important. So our next topic that we dealt with was this idea of holistic health. So in our first couple of weeks, we talked about health being not just their physical health, but the social, economic, emotional, cultural, and spiritual well-being. So that's what we mean by holistic health. Holistic health is determined by genetics. So remember, we talked about the environment, whether they've participated in physical activity, whether they're getting enough sleep, do they have access to adequate dental and medical care, are there things creating lots of stress in their situation, do they have a safe and clean environment, and are they part of a stable, respectful, functional relationship? And that we want to look at not just our responding to health, but to make sure that we are emphasizing the idea of preventative health. So things like healthy eating, washing our hands, putting in place preventative infectious disease control processes and strategies and so on. So we want to make sure that we are preventing health where possible, but also dealing with the idea that holistic health is quite large and that it encompasses many elements of which we don't have control over all of them. So our idea is that health, safety, and nutrition are all interrelated. So each of them will make a really good contribution to the optimal health and development of a child's ability to grow and, of course, to thrive in our environments. And each component that affects the state and the quality of the others. So then we moved on to looking at our care routines in our early childhood settings. So our care routines were what you focused your website on. And that was where we're looking at where we know that little children, they really, really need a good, ordered, predictable environment. They need to know what happens when they arrive. They need to know that there's going to be meal times and nap times and that toileting is being dealt with effectively and so on. It helps them to feel free. It'll help them to relax. It allows them the freedom and the joy to explore their worlds and become even more ready to learn. Now, we know, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about sleep and toileting, particularly in childcare. So those routines, they will be started at home and reinforced in childcare, and they're sometimes slightly different in childcare due to the nature of being multiple children and so on. So we want to make sure that we've got the relationship with the parents to know what they do at home and how we can make sure at childcare that we are following some of the same things, but sometimes different ones. And then again, it's the two-way street that we're then talking with the caregivers about what can be done at home, because sometimes things will work more effectively in a childcare setting and the parents want to know what we're doing that is helping their child to eat a little more variety or to sleep more effectively and so on. So then we wanted to make sure that we were starting to think about our idea in week 3 of daily health checks. So daily health checks are not where we stand and, intensely scrutinize a child. It's an informal screening. So it's where we are looking at their appearance, their behavior. We're looking at how they are conversing with us and with their other caregivers. And then we're making notes where possible. We take time at the beginning of each day to pay that really close attention to the child. We're looking for signs of illness. We're looking for anything that would be a disease of any sort that is presenting as a rash, a discoloration or anything like that. But we're also listening to the parents and to the children, and we're paying special attention to information that we're being given. So we want to make sure that we are noting things down where possible, because each of those notes can be something that parents might use for making a referral to a different type of specialist of some sort. So we're looking at, for our records, determining their health status. We're looking at patterns and how we might have any potential problems. We're making sure that we've got ideas for developing any intervention strategies if necessary. We're evaluating potentially any of the special programs such as speech therapy or OT that they are doing, and we're making sure that we're noting all of that down, because that way we can communicate with the parents to say, oh my goodness, that speech therapy that you're spending all that money and time on is making such a difference to your child's ability to communicate with their peers. I'm really noticing it. And parents will be like, oh, thank goodness. Or, you're really taking note of different things that have been going on. And so it's a backwards and a forwards. So our next one that we spent a bit of time on in week 4 was looking at food handling and safety. So making sure that we are doing the right thing as the educators and the adults, and that we are helping to build good habits with the children around the idea of how they are enacting personal hygiene in some way. So things that we need to be really aware of, we want to make sure that food is fun for them and that we don't want them worried or being concerned about the type of food that they have. We are preventing any foodborne illnesses by the things that we do in our planning, preparing and serving of foods. And we're obviously looking at choking hazards. Things that were around, we talked about chopping up the cherry tomatoes, chopping up grapes and so on, anything that could be large enough to obstruct an airway. And we're making sure that all food is safe to eat for the children. We then talked about in week 5, nutrition education. So getting the children to have food that is well prepared, but more importantly, to make sure that the food that we're preparing in the centre and that we're serving is highly nutritious. Now, we have part of the responsibility for that, but obviously a lot of that happens at home as well. So we know that we will give them good food in the centre and that we are then potentially going to provide some information for parents about things. So we want to make sure that we are minimizing potential problems. We talked about imbalances that might occur where we have inadequate nutrition. So obviously you're going to have the children hunger, but then you would potentially have obesity. You've got things like iron deficiencies, you've got cardiovascular disease, you've got various other diseases that can be formed because of inadequate nutrition in early childhood. So what we want to make sure is that we're getting kids to try out different foods. We've got really good mealtime environments, and that we have an understanding of children and potential eating disorders, and that we're making sure that we are influencing positively children's eating habits by the things that we do in the centre. So ensuring public health and safety. So week 6. So we know small children, oh my goodness, they do not perceive risk, even when it is really, really obvious. So that's the role of the adults. So then children must be supervised really, really closely. So if we look at Piaget's sensory motor stage, the health and safety risks for children in this stage are quite high because they literally do not understand that if they put their head down and slide down the stairs head first, that their head is going to hit the stairs at the bottom. They don't understand that. So we have to provide the right environments for them. We have to teach them how to move safely around and how to make sure that they are starting to look for hazards, but also remembering that developmentally our little toddlers and wobblers, they do not see danger. So it's up to us to make sure that we put in place the right safety procedures within our centres. And we talked about this idea that broken bones and so on, they're the 4th most common injury in our preschool aged children. And there's nothing wrong with a broken bone, but there is if we've been neglectful in our environment that we have set up. Accidents happen, but we want to prevent as many as possible. So early childhood teachers, we should be able to recognise and deal with certain things like asthma and anaphylaxis, because they are things we will have to deal with on the regular. We will always get children in our centres who will have asthma, anaphylaxis, various other allergies and so on. So in week 7, we had Di Chambers give us a lecture all about children with special health needs and about infection control and first aid and so on. So we want to prevent the spread of disease to other students. So we're making sure that we are giving them the right information at home, and that we are then using our daily health screenings to make sure that if they do have something that is infectious, we send them home again, and that we are providing the right environment in the centre, and that we are minimising the spread ourselves. So remember that we talked about how infection could be spread through sneezing, through various secretions like blood, urine, mucus, and it could potentially be spread through ingesting it through food and everything as well. So first aid is important. If you get the opportunity to do a first aid certificate, keep it up to date. So understanding how to deal with things like burns, insect bites, basic sprains and strains, abrasions where they fall outside, puncture wounds where they've accidentally had something happen to them, and so on. So then you've got your more serious conditions, so epilepsy, where they might have a seizure, asthma attacks, choking, severe allergies, fevers, colds, and horribly a loss of consciousness through various reasons. So make sure that you have made yourself up to date with all those ideas and have a good chat with your centre when you go out and find out who is the trained first aid people. There will always be someone on site who has a first aid certificate. Who are they? Who do you go to? What is your process if something happens in outside or inside time? In week 8, we had our briefing, but we also talked about mental health in early childhood. So we made sure that we understand where we can access help. We understand the importance of giving children lots of play opportunities and what are the hallmarks of an emotionally healthy child and the signs of potentially some health conditions that we might need to seek further help for. Remembering always, teachers, we play such an important role in fostering good mental health. We provide support and guidance to each and every child, and we want to make sure that we are also providing that where possible to the parents. So your exam will go through this in detail in tutorials. You've got 2 sections to your exam. You have a case study where I've written a little vignette and you will then have to respond to that. There's a number of elements that I want you to include in the response. You then have 2 essays that you are required to write, and there are 5 questions in those essays. All right. We will go through a number of potential questions within our tutorial, and we'll talk about the points that you are to include within each of your particular potential essay questions. All right. Total marks, 40 marks for the exam, total of 40 marks all up. So compulsory question, 10 marks. The others are 15 marks, which means that we require a little bit of detail and so on. So that's why I'll give you lots of information. You can then go and start to formulate some things in your preparation after the tutorial. So areas that we will use as our focus areas. We've got our foodborne illnesses, food safety and hygiene, mealtime atmosphere and environment, controlling the spreads of diseases, stress, daily health checks, and generally our quality area 2 and 3, looking at children's health and safety and the physical environment. So in our tutorial, exam review questions, a general review of the course. I've got a quick quiz for us, and then come to us with any prac concerns or issues. So thanks for an amazing semester. I look forward to seeing you potentially next semester, because I won't see you, I don't think, in the week where you are with Tracy. So I'm so happy that you get to meet with Tracy and work with her during that week. But if I do, I will say hello to you online. Otherwise, I will see you back on campus. I might see some of you for science, or what else have we got? Maybe for maths. We'll see what, no, not maths. What else have we got next semester? I'll have a look. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous final week.